So you are thinking about joining a trade. Great. You've actually come to the right podcast. But I'm not going to actually spend the next 30 minutes or however long this podcast episode is going to be talking about your respective trade. Meaning, I'm not going to start talking about all the money that you can make, even though that certainly is the case. I'm not going to talk about all the various training that you're going to get, which, depending on the route that you go, super important, you would get. Instead, what I want to do in the next 30 minutes or so, as strange as this sounds, is to talk you out of joining a trade. Wait, what? How did I come to listen to a podcast episode, you're thinking, specifically about joining a trade? And yet he just got done saying he's going to do his very best to talk me out of it. Well, bear with me for a little bit. And as I begin to talk about this, you'll understand why I said that. I'll give you a little caveat though. If after listening to this podcast episode, you are still intent on joining a trade, then I will have accomplished my goal. Quite simply, there's a lot of people who approach the trade, any trade, ironworker, pipe fitter, electrician, whatever. They approach the trades with an erroneous perception of, number one, what it's going to take ultimately to get in that trade. Number two, what it's going to take to stay in that trade. Number three, what it actually takes to do the trade. Number four, all of the various things that come along with it. And number five, many people are quote unquote interested in joining a trade and have not thought about all of that I just got done saying, in addition to thinking to themselves, am I cut out for a trade? I see this on Reddit all the time. And I mean all the time. There are so many posts on Reddit where individuals go to the skilled trades, or they go to some other subreddit like a construction one or whatever, and they say, hey, I'm X amount of years old, I have come from a white collar background, or I'm not really enjoying it, or whatever. And then they're thinking like, well, how much money can I make in the trades, or whatever. And a lot of people are asking, quite simply, the wrong questions. They're not asking the questions that they really need to be asking, which is, can I even do this trade? Can I perform what is required of this trade? Taking it a step further, what do I even need to do to live in this trade, to perform this trade, to spend years in this trade? None of these are topics of discussion. They don't even enter, from what I can tell, they don't even enter into the mind when people are actively considering their respective careers. Now, for those of you who have been listening to this podcast for quite some time now, you'll know that I'm a big proponent of pursuing opportunity. There are a throwback to the podcast episode as well as the article on the website, Passion versus Opportunity. I am not in the camp of being passionate about, follow your passions, if you will, for an occupation. I think that's bad advice. Instead, I think it's far better off that we tell young people in particular, pursue opportunity. Pursue opportunity. Now, allow your passion to fuel your desire to be successful, but find out where the opportunity is. And to be sure, some people are actively looking at the field and thinking to themselves, well, I keep seeing / hearing people talk about the trades. And that in and of itself is a very bizarre thing. It's a totally different podcast episode, but it's a very bizarre thing that on the cusp of like 3 or 4 decades now, after having denigrated the trades for as long as we have, that there's this much interest in the trades. And to be sure, AI is one of the key reasons why the trades seem to be getting as much attention as possible. But right out of the gate, allow me to say this. Just because there is opportunity in the trades, because to be sure, for those of you who may not know it, there's a large experience / age gap that exists in the trades. And you coming into this space does not automatically mean that you fill it. Because even if you are a younger or even an older millennial and you're getting into the trades, if this is the first time you're getting into it, you're still not filling the experience. But even if you do, it does not mean from an opportunity perspective that you are actually cut out to do whatever specific trade there's an opportunity for. Now, some people, it's just a mental block. They have a very difficult time conceptualizing that they are there and ready to do the job no matter what. They have a good teachable spirit. They have a great attitude. They're punctual. But some people, they just are unable. They're just, for one reason or the other, unable to do the job. Now, this podcast episode, the origin of it, actually, it was kind of interesting. I've had multiple conversations. I kind of live having conversations about, a lot of very nuanced discussions. And I was having one with a friend of mine who's been a mechanic. I've known him for 30 years. And right out of high school, he's been a mechanic, worked at a dealership, and has worked there for 30, probably close to 30 years now, because he was even working in it in high school. And his experience with some people coming in to the mechanic space was, some of these younger people were coming in and they were interested in the trades, in his specific trade, because he had heard the money that he could make. But coupled with the money that you can make are also some very intentional things that you could do to investigate and research what it's actually going to take to accomplish the job necessary to make that money. One of them is, am I ready for any job training? And quite frankly, the physical nature of your various trades. Now, to be sure, some trades are different. Some trades are more physical than others. Inside machinists, for example, are not as physical as ironworkers. Electricians are not as physical in most aspects of their trade as ironworkers. So, number one, when you start talking about a specific trade that you want to get involved in, I would highly recommend you understand the physical nature of the trades. And if it doesn't look like you're going to be able to deal with the very real physical aspect of the respective trade that you have thought about, you need to keep that in mind. I don't care if you do a pro con checklist. Doesn't matter to me how you kind of keep score, if you will. But a lot of people enter into their respective trade or thinking about entering in it without having even given it a single thought. You're going to want to think about this. And listen, if you're from a physical perspective, have no intent to be physical in your job, then you don't need to apply. You need to pay attention to that, because almost every trade is going to involve some form of physicality, and you don't need to waste anybody's time if that's not your game. If that's not what you're willing, if you're not willing to put forth any effort in that regard, then don't waste your time and everybody else's by pursuing a career that you have no intention of putting forth the energy and effort into doing. That's one of the things. A second thing that you need to 100% take into consideration is the trades not only are physical, but they are also out in the elements. That's right. I don't care how cold it is. I don't care how hot it is. Very rare are the days where the temperature fluctuations are too wide, whether it's too cold or too hot, for you not to go to work. And the answer of, well, I'll just call out, that is part-time work. That is not full-time invested in the trades. This is what I'm going to do. That's not the answer. The answer is I'm going to go to work. I'm going to drink plenty of water. I'm going to make sure that I don't live a reckless lifestyle to where I live continually dehydrated and thereby increase the opportunity and or chances that something happens to me because I'm not living in accordance with, how I should, and taking the job that I'm dealing with, and the fact that I could have a heat stroke, which is a very real, plausible thing. These are things that a lot of people don't take into consideration when they're seriously considering a trade. And I want to be, that person that tells you, hey, listen, I'm going to give you a bunch of information. I'm going to throw the chips on the table, let them fall where they may. And this is buffet style. If you've already considered this, then you don't need to take it off the table back to where you're from. If you've never thought about the fact that the trades are physical, and some more than others, and the fact that many of the trades are outside in the heat, and I mean in the heat, and some are outside in the cold of the winter, and you don't seriously think that you're going to be able to handle that, plan accordingly and understand that that's what's on the horizon for those of you who are interested in the trades. Yes, the trades, many of them are extremely physical. Yes, many of them are physical outside in the heat and outside in the cold. Oftentimes, those two things alone, when people seriously consider just how much they didn't understand when it comes to trades, they only thought about money. It's usually, I think, what I write about in one of my website articles is it's the 1-2 punch that knocks a whole list of people out. It knocks a whole bunch of them out. They either don't want the extreme physicality of the job, or they definitely don't want to be involved in what I'll say are the extremes, whether it's hot or cold. Either way, if you haven't considered it, or you know someone who hasn't considered it, I implore you to share this podcast out, because I'll be the one to tell them the trades are rough. The trades are not only physical, and they're not only done in the heat and in the cold, but here's another one for you. They're often extremely dirty. Now, there's a whole long list of individuals that have made let's say, a brand out of celebrating that. There's a bunch of stickers out there. You'll see things like dirty hands, clean money. These individuals there are, if you ask me, looking at what I'll say is nobility of having dirty hands, and yet my money is clean. I earned it from my hard work. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. As a matter of fact, it's to be applauded. So if you happen to be listening to this and you subscribe or you ascribe to that particular statement, pat yourself on the back, because you deserve every dollar that you've earned, probably even more. But for those of you who are seriously considering the trades, whatever trade you happen to be, ironwork, inside machinist, electrical, pipe fitters, just know that many of us come home at the end of the day and we're a whole lot dirtier than when we left to go to work. And some people have a real hard time with that. Some people, for one reason or the other, maybe it's because they've never really done any physical work during their childhood, and that certainly seems to be the case for a lot of young people. I'm not talking down to you. I'm just acknowledging what seems to be the case, and I'm trying to help you out here. If that describes you, then understand that the possibility that the trade may not be what's for you, due to the fact that some days, man, you just come home and you are, and I mean this, you look like Pigpen from, Charlie Brown, the Peanuts. He is dirty all over, and that's what some people are, and yours truly included. Many a day I have come home and I have been absolutely filthy. Like, take my boots off outside before I come into the house dirty. Like, go directly to the shower dirty. Like, burn through soap like nobody's business dirty. That is a very real thing. And if that doesn't appeal to you, if it's not something that you're interested in doing, if you're not interested in getting dirty, we're not the trades. I can speak for a lot of people. They want somebody who's willing to go 100% into this. That's leaning into the physical nature. It's leaning into the fact that it's going to be hot and it's going to be cold. That's somebody leaning into the fact that you're going to get dirty. 100%. You will get dirty. And a lot of the individuals who are active in the trades, who may very well listen to this podcast episode, if you talk to them, if you take a time to listen to them, or even ask them, what the trade is like for them, there is a sense of nobility in that. And guess what? You better believe they should be taking pride in what they do, and the fact that they're getting dirty and they're working outside and they're getting things done, and their physical nature, because some people just seem to be naturally attracted to the trades, and for that I commend them wholeheartedly. But if those first three, the physical nature of the trades, the hot and cold, and the fact that you're going to get dirty, are not appealing to you at all, take them into serious consideration when you're thinking about what it is you're looking to do. And this is especially true for those of you who have this thought process that the trades are all grand and they're going to be the next thing that you're going to go in and do to make a lot of money and everything like this, when you don't really know what's going on. Here's another one: feast or famine. Feast or famine. And you might say, well, what is that? When we talk about feast or famine in the trades, there are times and periods when we're working a lot of overtime because that just happens to be, it's time to feast. Could be shutdowns. It could be emergencies. There's a whole list of other additional reasons why that we're working a lot of overtime when we're out there doing whatever. And then there are times when it appears to be famine. Everything's running. Everything's good to go. Shutdowns are, let's say, sporadic. It could be, depending on the industry you're working in, you might have shutdowns in the fall and then in the spring, or you might have shutdowns around 4th of July and Thanksgiving/Christmas. And those shutdowns might not be going on for one reason or the other. Some people, quite frankly, end up, getting laid off. Some of them like that. They'll take the money that they made when they were making overtime, put it away so that they can weather the storm when it's feast or famine. Now, this isn't adequately explain everybody. Some people do stay working throughout the entire year, but some people don't. Some people also, they don't work. They may not work all of the overtime that others do. I'm just saying that feast or famine is a real phenomenon in the trades. And if you are looking for a job, hear this one for real. If you are looking for a job that you know your schedule consistently, day in and day out, I'm going to go ahead and save you a lot of trouble here. The trades are not for you. The building trades, the iron workers, pipe fitters, electricians, etc., they certainly aren't for you. Because the vast majority of us have at one time or another had to tell our family and everybody else, I don't know what I'm doing this weekend until I get off on Friday. I don't know. I'll find it on Friday. Don't know if there's going to be an emergency. Don't know if there's going to, we have an unplanned shutdown because something breaks, or, that's for those of us who are doing industrial work. Sometimes the schedule might say, "Hey, we're not working this weekend," but then the material that we need is delayed, and so we have to catch up, and so we're going to work a Saturday to catch up. Or I mean, there's a whole list of reasons and variables that we're not going to track down in order to explain why so many of us have existed in the feast or famine mindset. You just need to know that it's a very real phenomenon, and if you know anybody in the trades, you can ask them. There are very few individuals who can say with certainty they've been in the trades. They can say, I've never, participated in feast or famine. Very, very rare are the individuals who can look you in the eye and tell you that they've never had, to work overtime that was unplanned because of an emergency or, scheduling shifts and delays and all that kind of stuff. The overwhelming majority of us can tell you with certainty it's a thing. It's something. And it's something that you need to be aware of if you're actively looking for a specific trade. The next point that I would like to highlight for you, as far as what you may not have considered, is that if you're actively thinking about going into a trade, the last thing that you want to do is go to a trade school. Yeah, you heard me say that. You don't even know if you want to do a trade. Why would you want to spend your money on a trade school? You may, first off, you're not even going to learn the skill to the degree that you'll need in the field in the first place. But secondly, why would you spend the money when I'll say it this way. Why would you spend the money when you don't really have an understanding of what the trade actually involves and whether or not that is something that you're like ready to spend the next 10, 15, 20 years of your life in? It's not. And this is unfortunate because a lot of young people feel like they don't have answers from older folk. And you're 100% right. So many adults have taken the easy way out by telling you the cultural narratives. And then when you go to actually need their advice, you need to find out something from them, you're distrustful. And you should be, quite frankly. But trade school, in my estimation, is not worth the money when you can find an apprenticeship program and when you need to actually do your research on whether or not the actual trade is something that you can see yourself in for the next 10, 15, 20 years. It's worth whatever particular investment that you think you need to make into yourself. Trade school, I mean, quite frankly, I don't want to diminish trade school to the degree that I'm often accused of, but I'll say it this way. Trade school is like college light. Trade school is like light college. You got to go to trade school to get into the trades. It's not true. I'm an apprenticeship instructor with about 18 years under my belt, and there's a whole host of individuals who are in a classroom setting that I get the privilege and honor to teach, develop, and mentor. And some of them are in there from a trade school perspective, and some of them are not. The only difference at this point is that the ones who did spend the money spent the money. The ones who didn't are still going to get what they need throughout an apprenticeship program to then go ahead and be able to contribute to the contractor that they work for into the trade that they're in. In this case, ironwork. But apprenticeships have been around for a long time. And they are the metric. If you have weighed out everything that I've said earlier, and then after all of that have decided, yeah, I want to do this, I'm driven to do this, I'm aware of what it's going to take to do this, and you go into an apprenticeship model and say, I want to learn what I need for the contractors. People have done this for decades now. But trade schools are a way to capture your money. They're a way for you to spend your money and presume that they're going to teach you something when you may very well not be interested. in that respective trade, because they didn't tell you that it was going to be hot and it was going to be cold and it was going to be dirty and it was going to be physical and it was going to be feast or famine. And don't hear me say this. Do not spend your money on a trade school if you are not 100% certain, at the least, that the trade that you're thinking about going into is where you're going to spend a decent amount of time to recoup some form of investment. And if you really want my thoughts on this, I wouldn't spend money in a trade school at all. I would go into an apprenticeship program, but I wouldn't go into an apprenticeship program unless I had already done my research and communicated with numerous individuals. And quite frankly, if there were more young people interested, I would love to see more pre-apprentice programs just to expose people and what the respective trades and all of the perceived cons and the pros are, so that you can make an educated decision when it comes to, okay, well, this is the trade or not what I want to get involved in. And it's so seductive when the messaging that the trades are experiencing a shortage, that the trades are experiencing an age and experience gap, and it seems as though the trades are primed for, let's say, a large influx of people. They are, to some degree. But I don't want anybody entering into this opportunity or thought process without really understanding just how, just how the life is, quite frankly, how difficult it can be. And if you don't take all the various things that I've said into consideration, you could be in for a rude awakening day one. I've seen people come and go. I've seen people that didn't do their homework when it came to, okay, well, what is the trade and what am I thinking about and how much is it going to, how much do I really have to involve myself? And those that don't give 100%, they don't get 100%. They don't oftentimes last in the trades. And this is a great career. I don't want to not tell you, it's a great career. There's an awful lot to be gained. It's a lot of pride, a lot of nobility. But as an apprenticeship instructor, as an iron worker that's been in for 24 years now, and a podcast host, I would be remiss were I not to tell you, hey, it's not for everybody. And quite frankly, it may not be for you. Take what I've said into consideration. And if you have, it could be very well be that you've grown up working outside. You're not afraid of the elements, the heat and the cold. You're definitely not afraid of getting dirty. You know what it's like. You've weighed all of these various things that I've talked about in the balance, and you said, you know what? I still want to be an iron worker. I want to be a pipe fitter. I want to be an electrician. I want to be fill in the blank of whatever trade. I'm mostly talking about the building trades, your ironworkers, pipe fitters, electricians, crane operators, your cement masons, the insulators, these individuals. But if you come away from this and you say, I know what you're talking about, I want to get involved in those, those respective trades, whatever the trade you happen to select, then I'd say welcome. But for those of you who have not weighed all of that stuff out in the balance, I would tell you to not waste your time without really doing your research about what it actually looks like. How much commitment, how much sweat, how much toil, how much energy, how many hours, how much of you it's going to take to get involved in the respective trade and to commit to it. For many of us, it takes all of who we are almost. And again, I say, weigh it all in the balance. The trades are not for everybody. Save yourself time, save yourself energy, save the rest of us energy. If it's not for you, no sweat, no problem. But if it is, may I say to you, welcome. Hopefully, I'll get a chance to meet you, see you, interview, talk to you out in the field. But welcome to the trades. I look forward to seeing your contribution. And there it is. The podcast episode you didn't know you needed to listen to when it comes to what do you want to do for a living, and are the trades something that you can see yourself in? If at this point I have not talked you out of it yet, welcome. Stay safe out there, everyone, and I'll see you on the next one.